Hello, and welcome back to the Emerge Stronger podcast. My name is Sonia, and today I am with my co host, Melody. Before we get in today's episode, we want to say if you're listening and your spouse has said that they need space, maybe they've said they're not sure how they feel anymore, or maybe they've even said the word divorce out loud, we have something for you. It's a free guide called Save My Marriage, and it was written for exactly where you are right now. It walks you through the panic cycle, the 7 mistakes that might make things worse, what stability really looks like, and word for word scripts for the hardest moments, so you're not left guessing what to say. Head over to itsnotover.net and grab it. It's instant and it's free. Okay, so today we're talking about limerence and what it is, how it shows up in marriage, and what you can actually do if you think your spouse might be in it. Melody is going to walk us through all of it. So let's dive in. Hello, and welcome back to the Emerge Stronger podcast. My name is Sonia. I am here with my co-host Melody. Hi, Melody.
Hi. It's good to be back.
I know it's been a minute, but we are so excited to be recording today. Today we're talking about something that gets thrown around a lot, but sometimes it's just not very well explained. So I'm going to consider you, out of the two of us, the limerence expert. You are going to explain to us what limerence is, how it shows up in relationships, and then what you can actually do about it if you think your spouse is in limerence. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in, and please tell us, what is limerence?
So limerence was coined by Dr. Dorothy Tennov in the 1970s, and it is not your typical love. Okay, it's not what we describe as true love or even romantic love. It's really this obsession, and we would say for another person, and it's more like your perception of the person. Okay. And so you just have this unhealthy obsession, and it really begins to affect every area of your life. There's a lot of things going on in the brain whenever somebody's in limerence. So you have high levels of dopamine, low levels of serotonin, and it's more like, the only way to really explain it about what's going on in the brain, it's more about the anticipation of getting the person, or like being like reciprocation from the person, than it is actually getting them. So what happens is, if you envision yourself as a kid, it's like you're so excited about Christmas is coming, Christmas Santa's coming, and you're so excited you can barely stand it when your parents are saying you better be good to be on the nice list instead of the naughty list, and there's such this buildup of excitement. And then Christmas comes and you're super excited, but then after you open the presents, everything changes. You're not as excited as you were anymore. Why? Because you've opened all the presents, right? You've actually come together. And so in limerence, it's very similar, although limerence is far more powerful than opening Christmas gifts. It's more about our perception of the person, and then want that person to reciprocate. But then as you move into acts like consummation of that relationship, and I don't mean just sexually, although that could be a part of it, but you move into reality begins to cause limerence to dissipate over time. So I would say it's definitely an unhealthy obsession for another person or our perception of that person, and it causes all kind of havoc in our lives. So there's different symptoms for limerence. You could be thinking about them up to 85% of the day. You think that they are perfect. So even if, and we've had this case, if it was a woman that's been in jail for child abuse or whatever, the man is like, oh, well, there was reasons for that. Or if a woman's dating a drug dealer, oh, well, there's reasons for that. They overlook those things. So they have that halo effect going on. They will start habits or stop habits in order to be with this person. Sometimes it'll be like spending an obsessive amount of money. I remember for my husband, it was, he had to get this certain car, and he was so pushy about it. And in my mind, I'm like, why all of a sudden does he need this car? Well, he perceived that his LO, which is his limerent object, which is the person he was in limerence with, was at a higher financial status than we were. I don't know if she was or not, but he perceived that, and therefore he had to get this vehicle in order to impress her and make her feel like he was on her same level. You go from euphoria to you're down in the dumps. Like you're euphoric if y'all are like, if you believe that the other person is reciprocating, but if you perceive that the other person is not, for whatever reason, even, and it could be like I texted that person and they didn't immediately respond, you may begin to perceive that as, oh, they don't want to talk to me, although it may be they're busy or whatever. Oh, they don't want to talk to me. Then you kind of slip down into almost doom because you fear that they don't reciprocate. So there's a lot of different symptoms. Maybe I shouldn't call it symptoms because then that applies that it's a sickness. I would say characteristics of limerence, but it is a very powerful thing that a person goes through, and they become very obsessed with another person.
How is that different? How is that different when somebody first meets someone and they have an interest in that person and that's reciprocated. That interest is reciprocated. And we'll just say like for when my husband and I first started dating, is it possible that we were both in limerence with each other?
You definitely could have been. And I think you would have to take yourself back and evaluate some of your behaviors. But you can oftentimes in the beginning of a relationship, you feel infatuation for a person. You might have butterflies or whatever, but you don't obsess about them. You're not thinking about them all the time. You're not stopping. Like if you had plans with friends, you're not stopping those. You're still living your life and you're dating this person, even though that you might get some butterflies. With limerence, it's completely different. It's like you become hyper focused on this person, and people will leave their children, they will leave their jobs, they will leave their retirements, they will leave their spouses, they will leave everything behind just to be with this person. And so infatuation is normal in the beginning of the relationship, but if it becomes obsessive and you begin to walk away from everything, friends, family, all of that, to be with this person, and they're like, wait a minute, this person is a heroin addict, or wait a minute, this person has been in jail, or whatever the situation is, that can start showing you the difference between limerence and just regular infatuation.
So it's almost like you've got blinders on and your concept of reality completely goes out the door and you are in this fantasy land and what you refer to as this halo effect.
Yeah. I remember a good friend of mine telling me, like, when she first started dating this guy, she lost like so much weight. And she didn't really have that any weight to lose. And she got so skinny. And I was like, what's going on? Like, why are you losing so much weight? And she just said, I can't eat. All I do is just think about him. And I just have so many butterflies that I can't even eat. And of course, at that point in time, I was much younger and I didn't know what it was. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. But really, what it was, limerence. And he ended up not being good for her at all. But like, yeah, it really became obsessive.
Yeah. And so, how does someone know if it's like, let's say that this, okay, let me back up. We'll use you and David as an example. How did you know, or did you at the time, that it was limerence versus him falling out of love with you?
Mhm. Well, I think both things happened at the same time. I think that she gave him kind of a bit of incentive to move faster of the falling out of love. I think that we were already disconnecting in our relationship. We were very busy at that time. He's an electrician, so he was doing this big apartment job and he had so much time and he was working. I mean, he had limited time to finish it and he was working 712s. Of course, at that point in time in my life, we had 4 kids. I'm working a full-time job and I'm in school full-time. And so it was like hustle and bustle all the time. So we were not really connecting at all. And so I felt the distance, but I was just like, oh, well, we're busy. And once this job is over and once I'm out of school for the summer, whatever, we'll reconnect. We'll be fine. But then he started going out of town and things like that. And it was like he would just come home on a Friday and just say, I'm leaving. And I'd be like, where are you going? I'm going to Austin. Okay. He started leaving and going out of town before he met her. But when he met her, there was a lot of things. He acted like he hated my guts. Like he wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't look at me. it was like there was a lot of contempt. I could feel it from him. He began to obsess about this vehicle. And I even remember one day we were driving to go get the vehicle, and she called, and it came up on his on the Apple Pay or Apple CarPlay, whatever that thing is.
CarPlay.
Yeah, CarPlay. And I was like, he declined the call, which was very unusual for him because yes, customers call him all the time. And I was just like, who is that? Oh, that's some guy. And in English, the name is a girl name, and in Spanish, it can be a boy name too. And the way he explained, I was just like, okay, but there was something in me that was like, something's not right. The intense pressure that he put on me to get this car, like I was just like, okay. And I mean, we could afford it at the time, so it wasn't like, but I just didn't understand the why. He started obsessively working out. He already worked out, but it began 3 and 4 hours at the gym. He started smoking cigarettes, which was weird. He had never done that before. He started drinking more, and he hadn't done that before. He started buying new clothes, and he acted like he began to like really vilify me and really be mean. And so that was my clue. He started hiding his phone. He put a passcode on his phone. Back then, not everybody had passcodes on their phone. And so he started doing that and keeping it in his pocket and stuff like that, and not wanting to hook his phone to CarPlay. Like there was a lot of things that began to happen. And I was just like, oh, wow, something's up.
Yeah. Yeah. So can limerence happen? Is it typically just physical affairs, or can it happen in emotional affairs as well?
It can happen in emotional affairs too. They often become physical, but not every single one of them become physical. Some of them are because they're apart in distance. One might live in another country. The limerent object might live in another country. And so it's all online or FaceTime or something like that. And that can actually prolong limerence because there's never that realization, that never coming together. You know how they always say you never really know a person until you live with them? That is absolutely true. And you can be head over heels in love or in limerence with a person, but once it comes together, it is doomed for it to go away. Like limerence will end.
Yeah. And so I've heard limerence could end anywhere between 6 months and 3 years.
Yeah, it ranges. I have seen some short-term ones that are like 3 to 6 months. And you do have a few outliers here and there, but really, I don't hardly, even in my situation, limerence was over in 3 years. Now, that didn't necessarily mean that the relationship ended, though. The relationship hung out. I think David was probably in limerence with her for probably 2.5 years. And then I started really seeing things fall apart. He started saying things to me about her. And in my mind, I'm like, well, why didn't he just end it? And there was multiple reasons as to why. But at the 3-year mark, they finally broke up for the last time. They had broken up and gotten back together several times. So.
Okay, let's move on to, you've kind of mentioned a couple things like what it looks like in your marriage, like this distancing and becoming obsessive about either working out or buying new clothes or buying a new vehicle. What are some other signs that people can look for to kind of figure out if it's limerence or not? And then also, two-part question, when is it not limerence if someone's in an affair?
Oh, that, okay. Well, let me answer the first question. I would be careful about purposely looking for things. In other words, like I would be careful of going in their phone and stuff like that. Now, a lot of people say it's important to do that because how will you know? Well, you can know without knowing. If you have those situations where your spouse is pulling away, they're very cold and distant, I think you first look at it. Did something happen in their life? Did they just lose somebody? Did they lose a career? Like they could be going through grief. So I don't want everybody to be like, oh, my spouse is a little bit distant. They must be in limerence. Okay. It could be a million other things that it is too. Right. But if they start doing those obsessive behaviors, and sometimes they'll just come out and tell you, they don't want to hide it anymore. And they just come out and tell you. Sometimes the LOs will contact the spouse and let them know, hey, I'm in a relationship with your spouse or whatever. So I think that you just pay attention. And especially I would say pay attention to where you are emotionally with each other. Are you turning to each other or are you turning away or against? And listen, Everybody has their bad days where you're stressed out, they're stressed out, they come home and y'all, nip at each other, so to speak, right? But if it's a consistent turning away or turning against, that could be a clue. Again, what you do, whether your spouse is in limerence or not in limerence with somebody else, what you do to repair a relationship, it is no different. You just do the same thing we talk about all the time to repair the relationship. It's just one may take a little longer than the other, especially really it's dependent on the other spouse too. It's not just on you. I mean, of course, if you begin to make changes, it will start influencing the relationship, but it does take two people to reconcile a relationship. One person can stand for a marriage, but it takes two people to reconcile a marriage. So, and then what was the second question that you had?
Are all affairs limerent, or
Oh,
how
yeah.
do you know when it's not?
Yeah. So if you're not seeing any obsessive behavior, like starting, stopping, all that kind of thing, starting habits, stopping habits, losing a bunch of weight, or drinking obsessively, or missing time, missing money. If you're not seeing obsessive behavior, it's probably not limerence. So what else could it be? Well, there could be a different thing. So I have clients that I've worked with where one of the spouses just liked attention from the opposite sex. So it really has nothing to do with having a deep emotional relationship with another person. In fact, that was the second half of my stand. Is David had several women that he would talk to or even hook up with, in a sense. And it was more about, he felt so terrible about himself that he needed the affirmation from some person. But he told me, but as soon as I would get the affirmation, it was no longer valid. So I had to move on to someone else. And so it could be something similar to that. It could be that they just feel bad about themselves and they use it as an escape, or use it as a tool to feel better, just like people would use alcohol or drugs or porn or something like that. It's a bit of an escape from reality. It's kind of a fantasy thing. And so it has nothing to do with limerence. That's just their coping mechanism, so to speak, in order to feel better about themselves. Sometimes you will see that there are some people that have a compromised value system. That's how I'm going to say it, that just cheat. But what I have found is that is a very small piece of the population. There's always a why behind what somebody's doing. It could be a revenge affair. It could be just like, hey, I think this person's hot, I want to hook up with them. There's no emotional attachment. It could be something like a fetish, like swinging or something like that. So there are other types of affairs besides a limerent affair. All of them are typically painful if the spouse isn't participating, like in the swinging lifestyle or whatever. All of them are detrimental to, okay, let me back up. All of them hurt the spouse first. Okay. So if your spouse is not actively interacting with you, like in some type of fetish or swinging lifestyle, they will obviously be hurt by that because it is a betrayal. However, even people in that type of lifestyle end up a lot of times getting divorced because one of the spouses will fall in love with their swinging partner. So it causes a lot of disruption in the relationship. I actually remember talking to one guy where he was like, yeah, I thought my wife was cool because she was open to like having other sexual partners and me having other sexual partners. And then he's like, and then she fell in love with the other guy, And he was like, I thought we were just having fun, but she fell in love. And he was like, I wish I would have never asked her if we could do this. So
Yeah, I've encountered several people who have, whether it was polyamory or inviting another person into their marriage. And sometimes it even goes, if you invite another woman into the marriage, the wife left the husband for the other woman.
Oh yeah. It could be either spouse. That plenty of times where the woman leaves their husband for the other woman.
Yeah. Okay,
And let me just say this too.
Go ahead.
It typically is the woman.
Yeah.
It's typically the woman. In those situations, it's typically the woman that falls in love with someone else and leaves their spouse.
Yeah. I want to bring this up, and I'm not saying that it's a reason or it's like a justifiable reason as to why people have affairs or why they do what they do. And it's not even just affairs, but it could be like you brought up, they start smoking or they start drinking, they start creating a new habit that's out of the norm, that's maybe kind of outside of their moral compass. And I think it's really important to address because nobody, and I've said this a million times, nobody wakes up one morning and decides to destroy their life.
Yep.
Whether that's through drugs, alcohol, an affair, whatever it is. That's not a decision that just comes to them in the middle of the night and they wake up and they decide to do that. There's always a reason, there's always a behavior behind that, or a reason why. And I think it's important just to, and this is why it's so important, number one, to be in alignment with the Lord. And number two, be in alignment with your spouse and truly be connected. And this is why, like, I've seen so many times, and it's usually in the first session, tell me about your life in the last 6 months to 2 years. What's happened? And more times than not, it's always, I would say 99% of the time,
Right.
there was a death in the family. There was a job loss. There was some life event that happened that caused them to spiral, to disconnect from their spouse, to start drinking. So again, I'm not justifying any of what
Right.
they're doing, but there's a reason why.
Yeah, I always tell people, and I'm working with a couple right now, and that's very hard for his wife to understand, that there's always a why behind what, because she very much looks at it as, we have this beautiful family with these beautiful children and this beautiful home, and he has an amazing job. Why would he just get up and do this? And it's like, oh, but that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to help her understand. And you're right. There's always a why behind what somebody's doing. And I would go all the way to 100%, because even if it's just a person that's having affairs or whatever, and they don't really care who it affects, or they're just doing it, there's still a reason why. There's still a reason why.
And it could go all the way back into childhood. And there we talk about attachment styles. They were abandoned as a child, or whatever the case may be. Something, some sort of traumatic event happened to them and that they've never dealt with. They've never found healing, and they just don't even know what direction to go. And so they turn to someone else or something else.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so let's talk about, if somebody's listening to this and they feel as though maybe their spouse is in limerence, what can they do?
Okay. First of all, I would say don't freak out, which is hard not to do, believe me, because I obviously freaked out as well too. But it doesn't mean that your relationship is over. And I would just say you want to be wise about the steps that you begin to take and the actions and all of that, because everything that you do will affect the situation. Okay. Positively or negatively. And so you want to begin to be smart. So I would definitely say don't freak out. Try to be as calm as possible. And I'm going to tell you, one of the best things that you can do is get help. Get help from somebody that knows what you're going through and that can give you wisdom and direction. Of course, seek the Lord. I would definitely not start making ultimatums and demands, because that's never going to work. If your spouse is in limerence and you begin to make demands, it's either him or me, or her or me. They will choose the other person.
They're going to, yeah.
But they won't choose the other person forever, most likely, because we know that statistically that relationship is going to fall apart. Actually, 9 out of 10 of them fall apart even before they even get to marriage. Okay. And so it's a long shot that they actually make it to marriage. And so if you truly want to stand for your marriage, you don't want to begin to do that. The other thing I would say is that you have to have a rolling forgiveness. Because if they're in an affair with somebody, it's going to be blow after blow, thing after thing that's going to come up in the situation. And you're just going to have to do this rolling forgiveness and not hold on to bitterness. And don't be the older brother in the prodigal son story. Because if you choose that route, your marriage will end. So there's a lot of things. I mean, I could go on and on and on of do and don't do and all of that. There are some nuances in each situation, But a
Mhm.
lot of times these things follow patterns. Now, I can't guarantee reconciliation. And if there's anybody out there that guarantees reconciliation, they're lying to you because they cannot do that. Okay.
Yeah.
But we can teach you things that will help improve the chances of you actually getting back together. And here's the other thing, just take out all of the positive stands, and don't misread me. Positive is better than negative. Like, it's better to
Mhm.
positively stand and do positive actions instead of negatively stand. But statistically, 75% of people that have affairs on their spouses go back to their spouse. 75%. And
Mhm.
that's not if they did this or if they did that or whatever. That's just statistically how it happens.
Yeah. Well, and I feel as though I don't know what the percentage is of that 75%, those that are in limerence, the halo effect wears off. The
Yep.
excitement, the fantasy, it all wears off. It doesn't last forever. Just like your analogy of opening Christmas presents. That
Yeah.
feeling and that excitement, it wears off.
Yeah, it definitely does. And typically when it ends badly.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask you a couple questions, and these questions are coming from TikTok and some questions that people have asked.
Okay.
How do I not take it personally when he's choosing to feel this way about someone else?
Okay. I understand taking it personally. Okay. And you do have to, okay, I'm not going to shame you for taking it personally because it does feel very personal. It feels like they are saying, you're no longer it for me and I don't love you anymore. Or sometimes they say, I never loved you. That's another characteristic. I never loved you, and all of that. And so it feels very personal, but you have to understand, although you are affected by that decision, they are not doing it to you. They are actually doing it to themselves, right? And limerence is an unhealthy obsession where brain chemicals are actually affected, and so their judgment is off, just like it would be if they were high on drugs. The judgment is off, and it's not an addiction, so I don't want people to get confused. It's a momentarily. I would call it. Well, maybe I'm not going to call it that. Never mind. I won't call it that. Anyway, but you have this situation where once you're in limerence, I've seen two people, and it was very hard for them to just cut off limerence cold turkey. Just never talk to the affair partner again. And that's extremely hard to do. And they went through deep depression, and it lingered for years because they never were able to come to full realization that relationship was not going to be what they thought it was going to be. They stayed in the fantasy realm, even though they believed they were doing the right thing by staying with their spouse. For years that lingered of what would it be like if I was with that person. And then finally they came to resolve. But when I'm saying years, I mean 7 years, 8 years. It's a long time, right? But most of the time, once your spouse is in limerence with somebody else, it has to just run its course. And you want it to. Otherwise, you're going to be in that other category where you're waiting
Yeah.
7 8 years for your spouse to be all in on the relationship with you. And I mean, it may not be 7 or 8 years every time, like if you cut it off cold turkey, but it does cause it to linger. So I know it sounds crazy. I'm not telling you to push your spouse towards the LO for sure. You don't want to do that. But you have to understand that it has to run its course. And so I know you feel like it is a choice. And I would say it is in a sense, but once it takes hold, it's just like a person that wakes up in the morning and says, I need to escape. I'm going to drink a little alcohol. And then they start drinking a little alcohol every day, and then they have to increase and they have to increase and they have to increase. Eventually the addiction takes over. And that's kind of how limerence is. Once you get so far into it, you can't stop it. It just has to run the course.
Yeah. I had a client a couple years ago, a husband and wife, and the husband was in an affair, most certainly limerence, and he finally got to the point, the husband and wife got to a point to where he said, okay, I think I can do this. I think I can end it with her. I don't think that the limerence ran its course because he quote unquote ended it, but then weeks later, he was right back in it
Mhm. Mhm.
all over again.
Mhm.
And the second time was worse than the first time.
Right. Yeah, because I've experienced my life without my LO, the
Hmm.
fantasy, and I was miserable. Why were they miserable? Because serotonin drops so low, it makes them so depressed. They even have physical effects. They have heart palpitations, panic attacks, sometimes heart attacks. They can't sleep, they can't eat. Like it's like going through withdrawal. And so when they
Hmm.
reconnect again, it like just it soars, but it still ends, you
Yeah.
know. And I've had people say, oh, well, do I let them come back or not come back if limerence and over? And I would say we have to cross that bridge when you get there. But if your spouse goes to be with that other person, live with that other person, know that them experience life with that other person does cause limerence to end.
I'm going to ask this next question. You've kind of already answered it, but I think that there's a part two of this that I want to ask based off of this question. Okay. Is it fair to ask him or her to cut contact completely, even if they work together or share friends? So the work together is what I want to come back to.
Yeah. I highly recommend that if the relationship is over or they're trying to cut off contact with the LO, that they get another job.
Mhm.
Because every day when they see this person, it's like they have the potential, I'm not saying that they will every day, but they eventually have this potential of, like, I was working with a couple where they went to church with the woman and it was not reciprocated. So it was just a man that was in limerence with a woman that went to church there with them. And it was miserable for him and for his wife too, because he was trying to be honest with her about, this is how I feel. And, I feel like I've missed out on all of this and, all that kind of thing. And so I recommend that you do just move jobs, change friends, distance yourself from that.
Yeah. It was the work piece that I wanted to come back to because something has to change. And I've actually even if it's a neighbor, it's like, you got to sell your house and move.
Yeah. 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 Because it's
Okay.
a constant reminder for both. So if my spouse is in limerence with my neighbor, every time they see each other, you have the potential of rekindling it. So if you've ever had an emotional connection with somebody before, you can always go back to it again. Okay. You can rebuild that. I'm not going to have an emotional connection with every person there is, but if I have one, I have the potential. This is why you shouldn't talk to ex-boyfriends and girlfriends from high school, because if you
Yeah.
ever had an emotional connection before, that's a shared experience that you have, and you can build on shared experiences. And so it's important that you cut it off completely. And not only does it negatively affect you, like if I'm in limerence with my neighbor, it will affect my spouse too. It's a constant reminder. Your home has to be a haven, a safe place. It has to be where you come to rest and have peace and all that. And if my spouse has been in a relationship with my neighbor, it's not that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you're going to constantly, their spouse is going to constantly wonder, well, did they go next door? Are they hooking up in the backyard? I mean, like there could be a million things.
Yeah.
Even if it ended badly, even if right now they hate each other, there's always that potential. There's a thin line between love and hate.
It's true. Yeah. Okay. Last question. At what point do I stop trying to save the marriage and start protecting myself?
Yeah. So I think that you can, if you're standing for your marriage, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't protect yourself. There's definitely steps, measures that you can take to protect yourself emotionally. We do talk about you want to be a safe place for your spouse if they're in limerence with somebody else, because eventually something's going to happen between them two, and you want to be the soft place to fall, right? If you don't believe that you can handle that, I understand that. It's very hard to do. I've done it and it's very hard to do. It's okay to put a boundary there and say, hey, we're welcome to talk about the kids, our future, your job, whatever, but please let's not talk about him or her. Let's make this a safe place where we don't have to, neither one of us have to experience pain from this. And then other people will be more capable emotionally of doing that, but you have to be careful of, let me explain what I mean. Some people are able to hear about the LO or hear about what's going on in the relationship or how much he or she loves the other person and all that. and be able to handle that. And that can be good for the relationship with your spouse. Now, but if you do it too long, then what happens is you enable the relationship. So it is a fine line. This is why you have to talk to people that know where you've been and have walked it out themselves, and somebody that's not emotionally attached to the situation, because your family and friends are like, what are you doing? You're crazy. Why are you? He's a jerk and she's a hoe or whatever. Like, they're going to be saying all the things,
Yeah.
understand that. And that's because they love you, but you have to get somebody that is not emotionally attached to the situation, that has walked in those shoes. Make sure they have walked in those shoes, because if they haven't, then it's like, if I need financial advice, I don't go talk to somebody that's in bankruptcy. I go talk to Dave Ramsey. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
walk those shoes.
Yeah. Okay. We'll wrap it up. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you want to say to the audience that maybe their spouse is having an affair?
Yeah, I'm going to say, first of all, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, because it is a very painful situation, but it does not mean that your relationship is over. There's a lot of things that you can do that can increase your chances of reconciliation. And in this time, I'm going to tell you, like, I stood for 6 years, and so many times people were like, God, I can't believe you stood that long, and I can't be a Melody and all that kind of thing. But I'm going to tell you, that whole 6 years was not just about David. It had a lot to do with me too. And I don't mean that his affair was my fault, because it wasn't. That was a choice he made. Now, I contributed to the disconnection between him and I, for sure. But even outside of that, I think God took me on a journey of, like, really allowing me to discover who God was, who I was in him, the strength that I had, to even stand, but also to walk away from negative things that were affecting my life, for me to build faith and trust in God. Like, there were so many things outside that had nothing to do with my marriage, that I walked with that journey with God. And yeah, it changed my life, completely changed my life. And so there's the purpose of marriage. I think that there's also a purpose for the kingdom, and then I think there's just a purpose for you. Like, there's a reason why all this is happening, and I don't mean that God said, oh, let there be a fair. I don't think that, but he knows that we are human and that we are going to make decisions and choices and all that. And if you allow God to use that time while you're waiting, he will use it to heal your marriage. He will use it for it to be a testimony in the kingdom, and he will use it just to heal and touch you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. I also want to say too that as much as we would love to see your marriage be saved, kind of along the same lines of what you were saying, it's equally important to us that you are saved as well. And so that means that you have to look inward and build a relationship with God, and just to be able to heal yourself through this journey. Because you're absolutely right. It's not just about one side, it's about both sides.
For sure.
All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there. If you would like to find out more information about us, or maybe schedule a session with Melody, you can reach us at itsnotover.net. We also have a free guide. And so if you find yourself where you are trying to save your marriage, you can download our free guide called Save My Marriage. And please reach out to us anytime you would like at info@itsnotover.net. Thank you so much for being here today, and we will see you next time.
Bye.